On August 2, 2015, at exactly 3 a.m., a chilling call pierced the silence of the 911 dispatch center in Davidson County, North Carolina. The caller was Tom Martens, a 66-year-old retired FBI veteran with 3 decades of experience in law enforcement. His voice was steady yet urgent as he reported that he had just struck his son-in-law, Jason Corbett, with a baseball bat. Tom claimed that Jason had been brutally assaulting his daughter, Molly, and that he had been forced to intervene to save her life. He told the dispatcher that Jason was bleeding profusely and appeared to be unconscious, perhaps even dead. As emergency responders raced to the upscale suburban home, they had no idea they were about to enter a crime scene that would spark an international legal battle. Jason Corbett was far from the monster his father-in-law described over the phone that night. A 39-year-old businessman from Limerick, Ireland, Jason was known by everyone in his hometown as a man of immense warmth and infectious energy. He was a twin brother to Wayne and a devoted sibling to his sister Tracy, growing up in a tight-knit family that valued loyalty above all else. In 2003, at the age of 27, Jason married the love of his life, Margaret Fitzpatrick. Their union was blessed with 2 children, a son named Jack and a daughter named Sarah, whom Jason frequently referred to as his prince and princess. For a time, the Corbett family was the very picture of Irish happiness, living a life filled with laughter and future plans. However, this domestic bliss was destined to be tragically short-lived, setting off a chain of events no one could have predicted. In 2006, shortly after the birth of their daughter Sarah, tragedy struck the young family with a vengeance. Margaret had suffered from chronic asthma for years, but nothing could have prepared Jason for the severity of the attack that occurred in the middle of the night. She woke up gasping for air, clutching her chest as her lungs betrayed her in the darkness of their bedroom. Jason acted instinctively, rushing to provide her medication and an inhaler, but her condition deteriorated with terrifying speed. In a state of pure panic, he called for an ambulance and tried to comfort her, but Margaret tragically passed away before they could even reach the hospital doors. At just 30 years old, Jason was suddenly a widower, left to navigate the world alone with a 2-year-old son and a 3-month-old infant. The loss was a crushing blow that changed the trajectory of his life forever. Following the death of his wife, Jason struggled to balance his role as a manager at a packaging company with the overwhelming demands of being a single father. His friends watched with heavy hearts as he moved through life like a ghost, his usual spark extinguished by the weight of his grief and responsibility. Realizing he could not provide the care his children deserved while working full-time, Jason decided to seek professional help in the form of a nanny and housekeeper. This search eventually led him to a 25-year-old American woman named Molly Martens, who seemed eager to start a new chapter in Ireland. When Molly arrived at the airport in March 2008, she was met by one of Jason's longtime friends, who instantly felt a wave of unease. Molly did not look like a typical nanny. She was flamboyant, wearing a bright coat with a fur collar and heavy makeup. Despite the initial reservations of his friends, Molly proved to be an exceptional caregiver for Jack and Sarah in those early months. She was tender, patient, and seemingly devoted to the children, filling the void left by their mother's untimely passing. As time went on, Jason's heart began to heal, and he found himself drawn to the young American woman who had brought light back into his home. Their professional relationship quickly evolved into a romantic one, and Jason appeared to be coming back to life after years of mourning. The couple took the children on vacations, building a new family unit that felt stable and full of hope for the future. On Valentine's Day in 2010, Jason took Molly to a local cafe and asked her to be his wife, presenting her with an engagement ring. Overjoyed, Molly accepted, but she soon began a campaign to move the entire family back to the United States. By 2011, Jason had agreed to sell his home in Ireland and transfer his job to North Carolina to satisfy Molly's desire to be near her own family. They settled in Davidson County, where they eventually married in a beautiful ceremony, attended by friends and relatives from both sides of the Atlantic. Molly took on the role of a swimming instructor, but focused most of her energy on raising Jack and Sarah, whom she treated as her own biological children. Jason, meanwhile, worked hard to provide a comfortable life for them, securing a high-level managerial position in his new country. To their neighbors, they appeared to be the perfect American family, successful and happy in their suburban paradise. However, beneath the surface of their marriage, a dark and manipulative dynamic was beginning to take hold. Jason's friends in Ireland noticed that he was becoming increasingly isolated and stressed during their rare phone calls. The tension within the household reached a breaking point during the summer of 2015, culminating on the night of August 1st. Molly's parents, Tom and Sharon Martens, had come to visit and were staying in the guest room on the second floor of the house. That evening, Jason had welcomed them warmly, even helping Tom with his luggage in the driveway before they all sat down for a pizza dinner. Tom had brought a heavy metal baseball bat as a gift for young Jack, but since the boy was at a party, the bat was left in the hallway. After dinner and some conversation, the family retired for the night, with Jason and Molly heading to their master bedroom on the first floor. It was a typical Saturday night, but the peace would only last until the early hours of the morning. At 3 a.m., the silence was shattered by the sounds of a violent struggle that would leave Jason Corbett dead. When the police arrived at the scene 10 minutes after Tom's 911 call, they were met with a sight that contradicted the narrative of a simple domestic dispute. Molly was standing outside near a car, appearing distraught and shaking, but the responding officers noted something highly unusual. She had no actual tears in her eyes. Inside the master bedroom, the scene was catastrophic, with blood splattered across the bed, the walls, and even the ceiling. Jason's lifeless body lay on the floor, surrounded by evidence of a brutal and prolonged struggle that suggested much more than a few defensive strikes. Both Tom and Molly were covered in blood, yet neither of them appeared to have any significant injuries or marks of a struggle on their bodies. Near the body lay the metal baseball bat Tom had brought as a gift, alongside a large, blood-stained cobblestone that had also been used as a weapon. During the subsequent interrogations at the police station, Tom Martens leaned heavily on his FBI background to explain his actions. He claimed he woke up to the sound of screaming and rushed downstairs with the bat, finding Jason in the act of strangling Molly. Tom alleged that Jason was in a state of insane rage and had threatened to kill both him and his daughter during the confrontation. He described a chaotic battle where Jason supposedly pushed him to the ground, causing his glasses to fly off and leaving him fearing for his life. Molly backed her father's story completely, claiming that Jason had snapped because their daughter Sarah had woken up with a night terror. She told investigators that she had hit Jason with the heavy stone from her bedside table only to save her father from being killed. However, her story began to crumble when she claimed the stone was there for a children's craft project. The most damning evidence against Molly's story came from the physical examination conducted by the police and the medical examiner. While she complained of intense throat pain from being strangled, photographs taken at the time of her arrest showed absolutely no redness or bruising on her neck. It was only much later in the interrogation that a faint red mark appeared, leading investigators to suspect she had inflicted it upon herself. Meanwhile, Jason's family in Ireland provided a starkly different account of the marriage, describing Molly as a controlling and manipulative woman. They revealed that Jason had been planning to move back to Ireland and had resisted Molly's attempts to legally adopt his children. This refusal, they believed, provided a far more sinister motive for the events of that night. As the investigation deepened, it became clear that the true crime was not Jason's alleged assault, but a cold and calculated ambush. Following the horrific scene in the master bedroom, the investigation into the death of Jason Corbett took a sharp and calculated turn. 4 days after the tragedy, Jason's children, Jack and Sarah, were interviewed by child welfare professionals. During this initial session, the children painted a picture of a household defined by their father's volatile temper. They spoke of a heavy cobblestone kept on a nightstand, brought inside to be decorated on a rainy day. More shockingly, they recounted vivid memories of Jason physically assaulting Molly, claiming he frequently pushed and hit her. At the time, these statements seemed to provide the perfect shield for Tom and Molly's self-defense claim. However, as the forensic evidence began to speak, the narrative of a protective father started to crumble. The autopsy of Jason Corbett revealed a level of violence that went far beyond mere intervention. The cause of death was traumatic brain injury, the result of at least 12 crushing blows to the skull. These strikes were so precise and powerful that Jason's scalp was almost entirely torn away from his head. The medical examiner made a chilling discovery. At least one of these blows was delivered after Jason was already dead. The toxicology report added another layer of mystery, finding traces of trazodone in his system. Trazodone is a powerful antidepressant often used as a sleep aid, suggesting Jason may have been sedated when the attack began. While Jason was being laid to rest in Ireland next to his first wife, the legal war was just beginning. His sister, Tracy Lynch, fought a fierce battle to bring the children back to their homeland. 16 days after the killing, Tracy successfully moved Jack and Sarah to Ireland, away from Molly's influence. Molly reacted with public displays of shock and despair, portraying herself as a grieving mother robbed of her children. But in the quiet safety of Ireland, and with the help of psychological support, the children's story changed. 9 months after their father's death, Jack and Sarah made a heartbreaking confession to the authorities. They admitted that every word of their initial testimony about Jason's abuse had been a lie. They revealed that Molly had coached and manipulated them, threatening that they would never see her again if they didn't comply. Their father had never been abusive. The monster, they described, was a fiction created by the woman they once called Mom. This revelation shifted the focus back onto Molly's dark and hidden past. Investigators soon tracked down Molly's former fiancé, Keith Megan, who provided a window into her true character. Keith described a woman who was jovial and independent but struggled with a deeply rooted bipolar disorder. He recounted how Molly would spiral into bouts of depression, sitting on cold bathroom floors for hours. Their relationship took a dark turn when Molly lied about being on contraception and claimed she was pregnant. Keith later discovered an unopened pack of birth control in her wardrobe, realizing the pregnancy had been a deception. Tragically, Molly did eventually suffer a miscarriage, an event that plunged her into a state of severe mourning. Her parents, Tom and Sharon, began to view Keith with disdain, fueling Molly's growing sense of victimhood. In 2008, she abruptly left him to move to Ireland, keeping her past a total secret. The web of secrecy began to unravel in January 2016 when Tom and Molly were indicted for second-degree murder. The trial, which took place in 2017, was a battleground of forensic experts and character witnesses for both sides. Tom Martens took the stand, leaning on his FBI credentials to insist he acted only to save his daughter. He claimed he stopped hitting Jason only when he was certain the threat had been fully neutralized. However, the prosecution presented a bloodstain analyst who proved that Jason was struck while his head was low. This suggested that Tom continued to bash Jason's skull even after he was helpless on the floor. Blood patterns on Molly's pajamas also placed her in close proximity to the brutal fatal blows. Furthermore, a long hair, likely Molly's, was found in Jason's hand, indicating a desperate struggle for life. Other witnesses further damaged the defense's credibility, including Lieutenant Frank Young, who documented the scene that night. He testified that he witnessed Molly actively self-inflicting the red marks on her own neck after the police arrived. He had to repeatedly tell her to stop, as she was clearly trying to create evidence of a struggle. Paramedics also noted that Jason's body was already cold, and the blood was dry when they arrived. This directly contradicted Molly's claim that they had called 911 immediately after the fight ended. Financial motives also surfaced, as Jason had a substantial life insurance policy naming Molly as the sole beneficiary. It was also revealed that Jason had sent $50,000 to Tom Martens for wedding expenses. These financial ties suggested that the Martens family had a lot to gain from Jason's wealth. After 9 days of harrowing testimony and graphic evidence, the jury deliberated for only 3 hours before reaching a verdict. Both Molly Corbett and Tom Martens were found guilty of second-degree murder, receiving sentences of 20 years or more. As she was led away, Molly whispered to her mother, "I shouldn't have let him kill me." But the case took another bizarre turn when a juror admitted to discussing the trial before deliberations. This legal error opened the door for an appeal, and in 2020, the North Carolina Supreme Court granted a retrial. Tom and Molly were released on bond, though they remain forbidden from contacting Jack and Sarah. Today, the children live in Ireland with Tracy Lynch, who has dedicated her life to clearing Jason's name. In her book, she writes that Jason is finally home, resting in the arms of his beloved Margaret. The story of Jason Corbett, Molly Martens, and Tom Martens is more than just a legal case. It's a tragedy that crossed oceans and shattered two families forever. Depending on who you ask, this was either a desperate act of self-defense against an abusive husband, or a cold-blooded execution of a man who just wanted to take his children home to Ireland. What do you think? Was the plea deal a fair resolution, or did the system fail Jason Corbett? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this deep dive helpful, Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more true crime breakdowns. Thanks for watching.